Hi, my name's Ian.
I'm Davin.
I'm Marie.
I'm Malik.
And I'm Anna.
And this is our presentation on flaws in the American judicial court system.
Tom Robinson was a black man convicted for the rape of a white woman in the 1930s by the Macomb City Court. Although readers of Harper Lee's To Kill a Mockingbird know that he's an innocent man, he's still condemned by his community and court to death simply because of his race. Although he is a fictional character, similar types of injustices preside in the American court system today. According to the Sixth Amendment, everyone, whether a criminal or not, has a right to a speedy and public trial by an impartial jury. This basically just means that everyone has a right to be judged without bias. Seeing our rights, courts have the expected duty to uphold fairness and candor in the courts. Knowing the expected values of the court and our rights, to what extent are the present-day American judicial courts flawed in the trials of criminals?
Throughout history, racial and gender biases have formed our social constructs and defined our places in society, whether fair or not. In a case described by the Marquette Law Review, an African-American man by the name of Dwayne Buck stood on trial for murder. While his guilt was unquestionable, controversy remained whether or not he posed a future threat to society and thereby warranted execution. A court-mandated examination brought forth the opinion of a psychologist, validating the claim of his race as black, indeed increasing his potential dangerousness. While this statement not only grossly discriminated against a vast category of people, it was shockingly pivotal in determining the recommendation of the jury and the overall verdict of the court. Another man by the name of Pena Rodriguez and of Hispanic ethnicity was further faced with racial prejudice in his ruling as he stood on trial for allegedly sexually harassing two teenage girls. He claimed himself innocent and further had an alibi witness, another Hispanic man, who testified that he had been with Pena Rodriguez at the time of the attack. Following the trial, an ex-law enforcement official who stood on the jury was found to have held a strong racial bias against Pena Rodriguez. He claimed that Hispanic men believed they could do whatever they wanted with women, and further stereotyped his alibi witness as an illegal immigrant. Such discrimination violated the Sixth Amendment right to a trial by an impartial jury, as this man took part in the sentencing of Pena Rodriguez while retaining the strong racial bias against the defendant.
Like men, women also experience the unjust sentencing of the criminal justice system. However, women often experience lighter sentencing, as found by Sonia Starr, an assistant law professor at the University of Michigan, unveiled that women on average receive 63% lighter sentences than men who committed the same exact crime. They're also twice as likely to avoid incarceration altogether. Well, why? Majority of judges are male and therefore have a chivalrous clause towards women due to their greater caretaking responsibility in the private sector, leading to them to give them a lighter sentence than they would a man so that they can return to their private life.
When the incumbency of judges are on the line, judges must stay meticulous regarding cases. The Bureau of Justice Statistics notes that 39 out of the 50 states hold judicial elections. This means that the majority of the states give the ability to choose judges, a position expected to uphold impartiality in court, to Americans. Adam Liptak of the New York Times notes that the United States is the only major nation in the world that legitimately uses judicial elections to select their judges. The United States applies elections to bench judges that wield the ability to preside over vital verdicts. Judges must be highly conscientious of their sentencing track record, especially their criminal one, which could prevent them from being labeled as soft on crime from their campaign opponents. Kate Berry from the Brennan Center for Justice notices when nearing election season, campaigns can make judges much more vindictive regarding cases, criminal cases specifically, and make them more likely to override jury decisions. An example of public influence over cases, Coleman v. Kemp comes to mind. Escaped convicts, Wayne Coleman, George Dungy, and Carl Isaacs robbed and shot the family of Jerry Alday. They were convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to death. What is interesting enough to notice is that the acquaintances of the Alday family were sitting on the jury, and the defendant's attorney did appeal to change the venue to protect their Sixth Amendment rights to an impartial jury. The trial judge denied it, and so did the other judges leading up to the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals. The Circuit Court did believe that they abused their Sixth Amendment rights, and they ordered new trials for the for the defendants. All judges that denied the appeal were elected judicial seats, while the 11th Circuit Court is an appointed one. Proper abiding of the rules can be fogged with knowledge that one case can swiftly remove a judge out of their seat due to the public voting them out.
The basis of the American judicial system relies upon the usage of empirical evidence. However, issues arise with this regard of physical evidence as an absolute indicator of innocence. The deterioration of devices used to collect data compromises the integrity of evidence, leading to convictions based upon faulty determinations. Zach Whitaker's recent article for ZDNet brings to light newfound evidence regarding the deterioration of a breathalyzer fuel cell. The breathalyzer, a notably essential device, fails to produce evidence that adequately meets standards of accuracy, as erroneously inflated results falsely incriminate innocent people. Furthermore, not only can equipment fail, but the officials entrusted to uphold justice may too occasionally abuse their power. In Kareem Fahim's 2010 New York Times report, he details a 2008 case in which the NYPD tampered with evidence. Several officers deliberately destroyed and altered evidence in order to escape charges in a sexual assault case. Furthermore, the employment of eyewitness evidence accounts lacks the objective basis of physical evidence, affected by minute details such as interviewer phrasing and memory failure. An experiment conducted by Polish psychologists Karolina Dukala and Roman Polsik showed that in a mock interview, subjects were likely to change their answers following negative feedback from the interviewers. The mere expression of emotion on the part of the interviewers showed that caused these subjects to falter in their testimony, displaying the complete lack of reliability of eyewitness testimony. Furthermore, in an article published in the European Journal of Psychotraumatology, it was found that in the case of a woman who had altered her testimony in between interviewers, reminiscence alone had led to a change in the trauma narrative. This, coupled with the equipment failure, undermines the empirical foundation of the American judicial system, bringing into question the validity of the evidence used in the convictions of hundreds, if not thousands, of people.
A plausible solution that could correct potential bias in the American court system would be for a nonpartisan governmental commission to select candidates to become judges in state courts. From the selected candidates, governors can pick and choose judges to whatever state court they wish to be appointed to. This resolution is feasible because it would allow judges to express less public pressure due to their position not being determined by the public. However, according to the New York Times, this method of selection is still a closed election, meaning that the election lacks public input and political transparency, and can ultimately lead to power abuse from the judges who don't necessarily fully understand the needs of the public. Because honesty is key to ensure fairness in the American courts, the secretive nature of this solution hinders its effectiveness.
An extremely plausible solution to the biases that are found in the criminal justice system is the notion of a double-blind jury. The double-blind jury was proposed by Stanley P. Williams, Jr., a district attorney of Los Angeles County. The double-blind jury implies that the defendant is kept hidden from all the officials of the court for the entirety of the case. However, this solution does meet does meet problems through cases that are dragged on over extended periods of time because the defendant will have to be kept hidden for that set period of time. Also, vital evidence will need to be kept hidden from the jury and the judge that could lead to them gaining information on the defendant that could lead to racial bias.
From a moralistic standpoint, we know that courts fail to fully uphold standards of fairness and impartiality. We see these flaws in courts' biases, in judges' aims for political appeal during election season, and the unreliability of evidence. Despite these limitations and the failure to account for inaccurate evidence, we believe that by removal of bias from sites, along with rigid appointment of justices, we can moderately constrict the prejudice and inconsistent trials the defendants face. Thank you.
Ian, describe an argument from one of your peers' IRRs that made you think differently about your team's solutions.
One argument that I found was in Anna's, because in mine I had kind of the same as Anna's, and hers was the double-blind justice, which kind of totally eliminated the bias that is found in the criminal justice system because it hides everything from everyone. But yeah, so Anna's kind of totally reworked mine.
Thank you. Davin, what is an example of a compelling argument from one of your peers' IRRs that you decided to exclude from the team presentation, and why?
Can you repeat the question again?
Yes, of course. What is an example of a compelling argument from one of your peers' IRRs that you decided to exclude from your team presentation, and why?
One aspect of Anna's IRR, which was based off of the social and cultural perspective, and as well as Ian's perspective, which was the historical lens, was the argument that like not only were just women in general oppressed, but black women, or ethnic women especially, were more oppressed than white women in courts. And so in their research, it showed a rather drastic contrast between the sentencing of white women and the sentencing of black women. So like we did, like for the purposes of time and efficiency, we decided to remove the inclusion of racial biases against the more minority ethnic aspect of women.
Thank you. Irene, what is the strongest counter argument to the solution your team identified and won?
Could you repeat the question, please?
What is the strongest counter argument to the solution your team identified and won?
Well, we found that it's nearly impossible to erase the implicit biases that exist within human nature because of hundreds of years have been dedicated towards putting these biases in place. So it would take that amount of time to rework these biases and try to eliminate them from the judicial system.
Thank you. Alec, what is a way in which your team's solution makes you think differently about your own individual research?
Well, it made me realize that these issues that we have today of racial biases and also gender biases, they're so prevalent in today's society. So with the for example, with the double-blind jury issue, this would really help it, but I did notice that we didn't. I'm sorry, I wasn't much aware of like the issues that that were so prevalent in today's society, and it made it much clearer to see to me that we need to change these in order to make more effective issues, to eradicate such issues and to abide the constitutional rights of the Sixth Amendment.
Thank you. And Anna, describe how the content of the team presentation was changed as a result of the group's discussions.
Well, within our practice presentation, the first TMP that we did, we had tried to incorporate all 5 lenses within our presentation. However, this proved difficult due to lack of time. So within this presentation, we chose to instead focus on 3 lenses, which was mine, social cultural, Alex, political, and Irene, scientific, while Ian's historical lens worked hand in hand with mine due to prevailing biases in society due to history and prejudice, while Davin's lens of ethical remained an overarching theme throughout our whole presentation, as justices and courts are ethically called on as the foundation of the justice system to uphold impartiality and fairness throughout all trials, which they are failing to do so.